One of the most heartbreaking things that has been said to me by my own daughter was, there's no way that I will ever be able to afford a house. And today I'm going to be showing you exactly how you can afford a house after we talk about how we got here in the first place. Well, if you look all the way back in '08, when we had the last financial crisis, when there were hundreds of thousands of homes that were in foreclosure or in a short sale process, when we had an abundance of supply of homes that were up on the market and you couldn't even give them away. In order to get things back on track, Wall Street was trying to find the best way that they could make money when you have a ton of supply of homes for sale. Well, they thought, hey, you know what? We could turn these into rental properties. Matter of fact, we can get them on the cheap. And they would buy whole slates of foreclosed homes from these banks on the cheap. They were basically helping the banks out in order to get these foreclosures off their books. And at the time, it seemed like a great idea. The housing market started bouncing back, and we didn't see the repercussions of giving Wall Street all these houses. And then today, what do you have? A shortage of supply. And some people were saying, well, how does that even make sense? How did we have such an excess supply? Well, at that time, we were building, and we were building a lot.
Devastating few years for home builders, and the market isn't showing any signs that the fight to stay afloat is coming to an end. The National Association of Home Builders says this past year was the worst for home builders in half a century.
And we had so much built at that specific time. That's why there ended up being such an oversupply of homes. Today, ever since the '08 crash, home builders have not even come close to building what they used to build before. I show this graph all the time, but you need to see it too. This is how much homes have been built since '08. If you look at '08, you can see clearly we had a ton of supply. And after '08, many home builders got out of the business, and many others, learning the lessons from '08, decided they were never going to build that amount of homes in that shorter period of time. They were only going to build what they know that they could sell in that short period of time. And that's how we have the problem that happened during the pandemic. Because of the shortage of supply and the fact that builders hadn't been building as many homes, we saw home prices double in some areas, even going over double in other areas. And ever since that time, home prices have not declined. And in some areas, we have seen a small reduction in price, but those are in the areas that, guess what, had a lot of new home building. Today, home builders are even facing more of an uphill battle because of the cost to build a home today. That's why we're not seeing as many smaller homes on the market, because of the fact that it costs so much more to build a home.
Give it another 20 years and literally no young person will be able to afford to purchase a home, period.
Meanwhile, a slowdown is mounting in the home building industry, which could contribute to the ongoing decline of the starter home.
So even if the home builders wanted to build smaller, it's not cost effective for them to actually build them smaller. I have often suggested that we need to offer tax incentives, builder incentives in order for this to happen, also cutting some red tape. But we have to wait for those things to happen. And if they were even to do it tomorrow, it isn't going to help the affordability crisis today. But of course, the ever-loving, kind-hearted Wall Street has their solution to the problem of the affordability crisis.
That, FYI, was sarcasm.
So Wall Street's idea of solving this problem, saying that, you know what, kids today don't necessarily want to buy a new house. We don't need to build smaller. We need to build something that they can live in temporarily.
I think if you asked a lot of millennials, and that tends to be our primary resident, they would probably tell you that they don't necessarily desire to own a home or to own a car. And they've grown up in the sharing economy, and for what's important to them is lifestyle.
Basically making it so these kids today will never, ever, ever own anything. Wall Street investors want something that's going to give them money for repeating over and over and over again. Building one development, selling it to one family, and walking away is not repeat money. Not like building a house and having it for rent.
But no mortgage, and the idea is gaining steam. One of America's biggest home builders, Taylor Morrison, says it expects build to rent to make up nearly half of its business in the next few years.
You're starting to see across the country more and more areas cities having great new, smaller homes that are coming up, and you're thinking, wow, those look really great. I know that many younger people would be able to afford those houses, but they're not being built for them to purchase. They're being built to rent. Taylor Morris happens to be one of the biggest in the United States. They claim that their communities are actually a step above the traditional subdivisions. They offer tons of amenities. I don't necessarily think that selling kids this idea is the best idea. You give me your opinion on it. Because if you think about it, what you're doing is by the time that these kids are at the age of maybe where they do want to raise a family and all they've done over time is rent, what are they actually doing? They have gained nothing. And the rents today are right in line with mortgage costs. Don't go out there saying, oh, you can get rent for a lot less. Hogwash. Unless you're making over $120,000 to $125,000 a year in order to offset all your other costs. We're talking about insurance. We're talking about food costs. We're talking about health insurance, your car payments, gas, everything else. You have very little to save up for a down payment on a house. And you don't think Wall Street knows exactly what they're doing when it comes to this? They know exactly what's going on with mortgage prices, and they're adjusting the rents just so it's just a little bit less than it would be to purchase a house. That way they have those returning customers that are in that hamster wheel over and over again. So that way they're stuck in their rentals. It's a completely evil plan that they have, is to make our kids renters for life. And you know as well as I do, people that have equity in their houses have been able to use that equity for all sorts of things, whether that is to pay for their children's college. That's what a lot of boomers did. They took the equity out and paid for their college. They refinanced the house so their kids could go to college. Or they took the equity in their house because they got in a bad financial situation and they were able to pay down credit card debt and various other debts. Owning a home is security for things that could possibly happen to you in the future. These kids right now are being set up for failure. So that way they're renting for the rest of their life. So they have to work for the rest of their life. Wages are stagnant. Did you know that even a minimum wage has not moved since 1999? No, maybe it wasn't even 97. Let me look this up. Hold on. 2009. And if I hear one freaking person say, well, those jobs are meant for kids, that is baloney. If you really think about it, do you mean that the people that are working at Taco Bell should only be kids working at Taco Bell? Because you need to have people working at them during school hours. If they're only getting paid minimum wage, how are they supposed to live? When minimum wage was originally set up, it was just the minimum so you could survive. Today, minimum wage isn't like that. That is an issue. We need to raise minimum wage. But this is about housing. So let's get back to housing. My point to the rant was the fact that these Wall Street companies know exactly what they're doing and how they're keeping the rent fixed. And they are fixing these rents across the country in each and every single state. It isn't just your major cities. They know where they're going to fix them. And you're thinking, well, they can't own it all. How could they price fix? Well, they use one computer system, one. And all of the little companies that get together, they collude with one another. There's a lawsuit out there, by the way. They have colluded to keep rents at a certain level, no matter where you move across the city. So if it's $2,000 over here in North Atlanta, it's going to be $2,000 in South Atlanta. If it's $3,000 in Chicago, all the apartment complexes in that area are going to be $3,000. There's a company that has worked this algorithm. So all of these Wall Street landlords are using this in order to collude with one another to keep the rents exactly the same across the board in one specific area.
We allege that this software is developed, marketed, and sold to enable landlords to sidestep vigorous competition in the rental market.
Pure freaking evil. But it isn't just single family houses that they're doing this with. They're also, of course, saving the day. And Wall Street has now invested in more apartment complexes, townhomes, multifamily units, so that way they can address the affordability issue. They're addressing it all right, but they're not really helping people in the future.
I don't want your help.
It begs the question, where is the government? Like the people that we hired in order to help us?
We ban companies from buying homes. In this case, the companies
are hedge funds. Now, some Democratic lawmakers are trying to do just that, introducing a new bill that would ban institutional investors from buying and owning single-family homes in the U.S.
You know as well as I do, everything is a lot of lip service, and they get up on stage and they get to say all this great stuff about the affordability crisis. Once they get their picture in the paper or the news story's done, they walk away from that affordability project. There have been bills out there that have supposedly going to address Wall Street and private equity investors that have been buying so many homes across the United States. To this day, those bills that are way over a year old at this point have never, ever, ever seen the floor of the House or the Senate, and they never will.
California has been underperforming by more than 1 million units a year for the last 20 years. We simply don't build enough houses. And I'm not sure the federal government changes it because it's a local issue. If you want housing to be cheaper, though, just build more housing.
But it's time to kind of switch gears and think about housing in a completely different way. What we used to think as the American dream with the little white house and the picket fence and the big neighborhood has to be reimagined. And you're going to have to change your mindset of what the first house is going to be. So let's talk about the solutions and think about this before you turn your nose up and start saying, oh, that is awful. Because I already have heard it time and time again. We have to get these kids into their own house first. It's a stepping stone. It may not be your most preferred house, but at least it's a house and you're not paying Wall Street or a landlord. It's a way to build your wealth ladder. So let's get into the solutions. So solution number one, we're going to be going through this list as the most expensive of the most affordable housing options to the least expensive affordable housing options. So number one is going to be modular construction. And the reason I say modular construction is the most expensive per square foot, modular construction falls in line with traditional home construction. And you're like, how is that an affordable housing solution? Well, the thing is that with modular homes, when they're built mostly in the factory, they're built quicker, because you can build in mass at scale much faster than you can with traditional home building. Not only that, you don't have to worry about weather conditions. They're extremely energy efficient, and you can get a lot of them done at one time. If you have a specific floor plan, let's just say a 2-bedroom, 1 bath, or a 3-bedroom, 2 bath, and it's the same type of house over and over and over again, and at that location, it's the same slab over and over again. So they're just delivering these houses by crane, one by one. And if you think that's an impossible solution, it has been done before. It was done after World War II. That's why we have all those smaller World War II houses that are still even standing to this day. They were able to get those houses done one right after another. And since we're in this affordability crisis, to get 100 homes done in a month would be really, really quick. Now, the thing about it is, of course, the land is still going to cost a lot, and the home builders are still going to have to take on the same expense. So like I said, this would be the most expensive affordable housing option, and you would have to help with the government in getting the red tape cut so we get these houses built even quicker. So that is another step into the real estate ladder. So let's get into solution number two. Not everybody's going to be able to afford a mortgage for a townhome or even a condo for that matter. As you know, across the United States, condo associations have gone up a lot. And even though that was an affordable housing solution back when I was growing up, it no longer is as affordable as it used to be. And to propose that to the younger generations as a viable solution for affordability is a misnomer. Even if they were to get a mortgage that was affordable, you can never guarantee how much that those association dues are going to go up every single year. So we need to think of something else. We're going to think outside the box. And I know older generations are going to hate this idea, but I still think it's a very viable solution. And that is a mobile home, also known as a manufactured home. We used to call them mobile homes. They rebranded them to call them manufactured homes, because anything that was built before 1976 is considered a mobile home. Anything after that was built to specific building standards, and that was governed by HUD, and then they ended up being called manufactured homes after that. All right, before you groan and say, oh, mobile homes, just stop right there. we need to get younger generations on the property ladder. Now, when you're looking at manufactured mobile homes, you're going to see a variety. They can go really high in price, by the way, because you can get all the amenities put in them. Anything that you see in a traditional built home, as far as like flooring, cabinetry, wood beams, those kinds of things on the interior of the house can be upgraded in a manufactured home. So it could be as low as like $80 per square foot just for the house, or it could be $180 to $200 per square foot, depending on what you put in it. It's just like any other type of construction you do. Now, you have a few options when it comes to actually putting your manufactured mobile home in a location. Of course, you have your mobile home parks, but I will warn you on this. If you decide to put your manufactured home in a mobile home park, be very aware of who is actually governing the mobile home park. And if it is a co-op, or if it's owned by one individual owner or a corporation, because Wall Street has scooped up as many manufactured home parks as possible because they want to go ahead and increase the rent.
People living in a local mobile home park outraged over the sharp increase in lot rent.
Rents were raised by nearly 60%. Their rent could increase by thousands of dollars a year.
Now, if you find a mobile home park that is a co-op, you're far less likely to have a corporate investor come through and scoop up that particular mobile home park. Mostly because everybody in the mobile home park has a stake in it. They would all have to vote and agree to have the sale of the mobile home park to a private equity firm. And most people like you and me aren't going to do that. Can you imagine trying to get, 50 people to agree on one thing? That's a really difficult thing to do. That's why it's a better safety net to look at a mobile home park that is a co-op. Now, the second option that you have with a mobile home is you can buy your own land and put it there. Now, when you're going to search for land, you're going to have a harder time finding residential areas that allow for mobile homes. It's going to take a little bit of legwork. And the reason I like this option the best is because when you have a piece of land that is attached to a mobile home, now you have real property. This is something now you can borrow against. It becomes your stepping stone into the property ladder. Is it the ideal thing that you dreamed about? Is this the American dream? For some people it is. And down the road, you can sell it. And if you don't want to sell it, or you feel like that it's lost value and you won't make any kind of money on it, you can always rent that piece of property out. I've often suggested to many of my past clients that if they had a mobile home and they were considering selling it, I asked them if they could qualify for the house without having to sell their mobile home that's attached to property. And using that as an income producing property, some people have taken me up on it. Of course, it's something that makes people very nervous to do. Nobody wants to be the bad landlord. And if you've never been a landlord before, it's always very nervous to know who's actually renting out your house. But it is a good way to go ahead and earn money and have your first income producing property. Now, if you didn't want to buy a brand new manufactured home, you don't have to. There's lots of people that are reselling their manufactured homes. You can find them on Zillow. You can find them on the MLS. Now, my favorite piece of advice, if you're looking for the most affordable mobile home that you can find, is to look for foreclosed mobile homes. And I'm not talking about the ones that are on HUD. I'm talking about ones that credit unions have foreclosed on that were never attached to land. They were probably either in a mobile home park or they were set on land and the people never made their payments. I've had people in the past go to some of these auctions. They're the same auctions that they auction off boats and they auction off motorcycles and all sorts of things that the credit unions have financed that they never made a payment on. And one of my past clients ended up getting a brand new mobile home. It had never, ever been lived in. Still had tags inside the drawers of the kitchen cabinets, and he got it for $6,000. The caveat to that is when you find those, first of all, you're going to have a hard time getting insurance. Secondly of all, you have to pay cash. You have to pay cash right there at the auction site. Thirdly of all, you're going to have to find somebody to pick up that mobile home and move it to your location. So if you're just wanting to pay out cash, go to these auction sites and have it put on your land. The other thing too is you're going to want to make sure that you have something to set that mobile home on when you get it to your location, and they are not going to store it for you. So there is some things you need to investigate ahead of time before you go to those auctions. But it's affordable and you wouldn't have to pay a landlord. Just make sure that that land can have a mobile home on it. I would hate for you to go to the auction and get this mobile home, put it on the piece of property, and someone from the county says you got to remove it. So be sure you understand your piece of land before you dump a house on it. Any house for that matter. So let's talk about our next affordable housing option. This particular type of house gets me a lot of guff, and it's mostly from people that are Gen X and above, older Gen X and above, and that is,
wait for it, drum roll please,
a tiny home or an ADU. People in older generations don't necessarily love the idea of thinking of the American dream as being in something tiny. There are many people that love the idea of being tiny and want to live that tiny lifestyle. There's many people are just looking for the most affordable housing option for them. When you're searching for a tiny home company, I want you to look up some certain things about them because they are very affordable. First, I want you to find out what the tiny home is built to. Second, I want you to understand where you're going to put this tiny home. Are you going to put it on a piece of land? Are you going to put it in a park? Make sure it has the right certifications so you can put it in a park. Now, tiny homes used to be super affordable. I remember when they first came out, people were like, I just built a house for $20,000. Matter of fact, I even featured a tiny home that they had done the whole entire thing for $30,000. But that was several years ago. Today, tiny homes have gotten so incredibly popular. And what happens when things become extremely popular and more people want them? They end up getting more expensive. You have to be very aware and wary of a lot of websites that are selling tiny homes, because out there on like Instagram and TikTok, there's been a plethora of scammers over the years, taking deposits and never delivering the house. Some people even paid full price and never got the house.
Customers seeking to buy a tiny home from him, alleging he took their money and never delivered their product.
Now, you can also have a tiny home put on a slab where it's in that dedicated spot. If you end up getting a tiny house that's on a slab, you're going to have to make sure that you have the right permits for it. A lot of areas require a certain amount of square footage in order to put a tiny home on that piece of land. And you might have to have a certain size lot in order to have that tiny home put there. You're still going to have the expense of putting in a well and electricity. So if you're deciding to do a tiny home on a slab, make sure you pencil it all out just like you were building a traditional home. It just happens to be that it's really small. I know some of you right now are probably rolling your eyes because you're thinking, oh, that investment. This particular house may not be your forever home, but at least once you have it all put together, you can either A, sell it in the future, or B, use it as a rental property, and then that's an income producing property. But there's some other options out there as well. So let's get into the next one. If you happen to be my age and you happen to have children that are in their 20s or maybe a little bit older or a little bit younger, you probably are looking at the cost of living today, and you realize that in order for your kids to launch into the universe, it's going to take a lot more money than it used to. So you're probably thinking of some other solutions for them. And you may want to consider, if you happen to have a big backyard, creating an ADU. Now, this wouldn't be something for them to build equity in their own lives, but at least it will allow them to be able to save money for the future. So you can create this ADU, which is basically like a tiny home in your backyard. Now, some of them will be attached to its own well and its own electricity. In some states like California, they even allow you at some point to parcel off your piece of land and you could sell that ADU as its own individual land. I don't know how the whole process works. If you happen to be California and you want to know more about that, I have people that you can connect with. But if you were considering doing this, all it will do in the future is add more value to your personal home itself, because you have a living unit on your property, even if you weren't to parcel it off. As we age, our parents are getting older and they are looking at different options. They may not be ready for assisted living, or assisted living is too expensive. So they're looking for these granny flats or ADUs in the backyard to have their parents close by, but still have their own independence. That is the same for younger generations as well. So you may want to consider putting an ADU in your backyard. It's a fantastic option. May not be very affordable for you as the homeowner because it is expensive to put in an ADU. I've seen them as much as, $300,000-$400,000, but it depends on what you put in them. Now, the most affordable option I want to throw out there is a kit home. And I know you've probably seen them. I've spoken about them many times on my channel. There are ones from like Home Depot or from Amazon. They have these little small kit homes, and you can get them as low as like $22,000 all the way up to, I've even seen them over $100,000. Word of warning on this, you're still going to have to get them approved with the permitting office for the local county. Make sure that they are the right square footage. And the other thing is that when they do come in, you're going to have to work with somebody to get it put in and put in correctly. If you're a novice at this, it could take a long time. So it's one of those things you're going to have to hire a general contractor to bring it up to code for the area so you can get your electricity put on. You're still going to have to do a water well, and you may have to do a little extra insulation, but it's very, very affordable. Now, most kit homes, especially the ones I'm talking about that from Amazon and Home Depot, the majority of them, this is temporary housing. And what I mean by that is they're not built to last. This is not going to last you 100 years. But if you're looking to save money, live in there for a period of time, and then you can build your own home. And that, my friend, is going to be the easiest, cheapest way to get into real estate and have a brand new home is to build it yourself. Yes, you can build your own home. And I happen to have lots of friends on YouTube that can tell you how to do it. One of them is my friend Melissa over there at How to Build Your Own Home. Easy enough channel to remember, right? And the second one is Mike Luckadoo. He has the coolest last name ever. I just love saying it. Mike Luckadoo. And that channel is the Armchair Builder, and he will teach you how to build your own home. Talk about a pride in ownership. You take this stepping stone of getting your own piece of land. Then you would just have this small little kit home, or maybe even a tiny home or a mobile home. And then in the future, you've saved so much money because you're not paying a landlord. And now you can build your own home. We live in a completely different world than when I bought my first home, and a completely different world when the boomers bought their first home. And we have to come up with more unique solutions to this problem. Waiting for government to do it for us is not working. They don't work for us. So why don't we beat the hedge funds, the private equity firms at their own game? Instead of churning people into renters, why don't we find different ways for them to be able to own real estate? And I've given you several different solutions. Let me know which one is your favorite, and let me know which one you hate the most, because everybody loves to give their opinion and I want to see them. To watch more videos about affordable housing, you're going to want to watch these videos right here. My name is Kristina Smallhorn, your real estate whisperer. And I tell you all this because good real estate information matters.